Alright, we're going to go ahead and get this cylinder head put back in on this 2000 Accord LX. So come along, check it out, see how I do it. And here's some of the parts I'll be putting on when I put the head back on. Of course, we got a new head gasket, new intake and exhaust gaskets, a new valve cover gasket seal, along with the this is a kit that has all the seals, the spark plug tubes and the bolts, washers. I'll be replacing the bolts because one is broke and the rest were probably over torqued. New dowel pins for the head, new distributor O-ring, new exhaust manifold bolts. You're supposed to replace those, or nuts, excuse me, whenever you do that. And I know I said I wasn't gonna put new head bolts in, but I got new head bolts, so we're putting those in. And before I put everything back together, I cleaned the block deck and the manifold mating surfaces. I used a carbide scraper. This one is from Super Scraper, and does a good job cleaning up without gouging everything up. Very important, clean your mating surfaces. I ended up having to replace the catalytic converter slash exhaust manifold. They're all in one unit on this due to the crack. It was cracked all the way through, so I didn't have to clean that because it's getting it brand new. And as you can see, this is a D16Y7 engine. Alright, using brand new dowel pins. We'll go ahead and insert them right there. Alright, and using a brand new Honda head gasket, just match it up, look and see how it goes. You can see these little notches right here coincide with right there. You can't really put it on backwards, but I suppose you could if you really tried. You can see this point right here goes over here. You just set it on just like that. Alright, we'll go ahead and set the head in place. You can see you just kind of maneuver it, set it down, just try not to scratch it. I put these in there to keep oil from going down these passages while we installed it. You want to keep that surface down there clean. Now I put the I dropped this head on with the cam sprocket already installed, with the inside timing cover already on. You can do it afterwards if you want. You're just going to have to sneak in there and tighten it up. You're going to need something to hold this. And I already put a cam seal in there also, so it's all new. And as you can see, this head is straight from the machine shop. So all the surfaces are flat, valves are all fixed properly. And it's checked for any cracks or leaks. I highly recommend, if you're going to pull the head off, have a machine shop do the work for you. It's definitely a lot easier. A couple things I want to point out while I'm thinking of it. You can, I don't know if you can see, but that has the word up right there, and the little dash marks right here and right here, or even with the deck of the head there. So we're at number 1, top dead center. And the bottom half of the engine is the same way. So I always make sure everything's set at number 1, top dead center, before you put the head back on. You don't want your valves to be hitting the bottom half of your engine. All new exhaust studs and intake studs. This is new because it was all pitted before. New coolant sensor. This is new because the old one was pitted too. I put a new thermostat in there. New heater hose. I'll put a new upper radiator hose on there too, because this engine had overheating issues, and we don't want this thing to overheat again. You don't want to do all this work only to have another blown head gasket. So those are some of the things I do. Alright, and although Honda doesn't say you have to put brand new head bolts in, some vehicles you do. Once you take the head off and the bolts out, you must replace them. Hondas, at least this one, it's not that way. Many Hondas are that way, where you can reuse the bolts, but it's never a bad idea to put new bolts in. And when I originally pulled it, I was just going to reuse the heads, but then once I had to have the whole head redone due to the damage that was on here, I went ahead and just bought new bolts. So we'll be putting new bolts in. We'll oil the threads. We're going to have to oil right in here too, where the washer is, and then we'll drop them in. There's 10 of them. And if you do get new bolts, this is the old one, this is the brand new one. Make sure they're the same. Last thing you want to do is put bolts that are the wrong size in there. So these are the same. If you're going to reuse your old bolts, I highly recommend cleaning up the threads, like with a wire wheel or something. And I should mention, I already, when the head was off, I blew out all the holes, got all the oil and coolant and all the crap out of there, so they're nice and clean. Alright, even though they come with some oil on there, oil the bolts. We'll go ahead and set them in place. I'm oiling them again every time, right before I drop it in. And if I didn't mention it, I cleaned all the mating surfaces with brake clean before I dropped this head on. And with a 14mm socket, we'll just get them started by hand. I don't use power tools on this. Alright, all 10 are started. Alright, here's our little cheat sheet for the bolt tightening sequence. So they're laid out just like that, 1 through 10. So number 1 is the center, right in the middle, right there. And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just like that. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10. And we got to do it. The first go around, we're going to do it to 14 foot-pounds. And then we'll do it all again at 36 foot-pounds. Then we'll do it again at 49 foot-pounds. And then they want you to do it again at 49 foot-pounds, but only for 1 and 2. So that's the procedure right there. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is bring them all down so they're touching the head. Alright, torque wrench set to 14. We'll do a first round at 14. Now this is a 3/8 inch torque wrench, and it can go from 5 to 100 foot-pounds, but the lower end below 20, it's not as accurate, so you got to remember that. So 14, that's probably about the lowest I would use on this. Any lower than that, it might not give me very good accuracy. Alright, now we'll do it again. We'll go with 36 this time. Alright, now we'll do the next round, 49. And then we'll do the last two, 1 and 2, at 49 again. And they were right there. They didn't even move. So there you go. That's the proper procedure. In my experience, the bolts, they shouldn't make a bunch of noise. If they're just hooting and hollering the whole time down, back them out and clean them up. But if they just barely make a noise every once in a while, I don't worry about it personally. But the book says if they make any noise, period, you're supposed to back them out. But you'll do it 10 times, and I don't want to ruin the head gasket. So if it just barely makes a tiny bit of noise, I'm alright with it. By the way, this snap-on tech angle torque wrench, model A-Tech 2FR100B. This is the 3/8 inch version, 5 to 100 foot-pounds. I really like it. Alright, using a brand new Honda intake manifold gasket, we'll just set this in place. Just make sure you put it on the right way. Alright, we'll get that bolted up. This is where it helps to label your stuff when you take it off. The intake manifold bolts you can reuse. The exhaust manifold, I'm sorry, nut. You can reuse the nuts on the intake. The nuts on the exhaust you're supposed to replace. You know what? Probably a good idea if we put something over this. We don't want to drop any nuts down there. Alright, now that they're all started, that's the hard part. It's very easy to drop those bolts down behind there. Alright, and just like all gaskets, when we put them on, we're going to start from the center. So we'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 towards the outside, back and forth. The torque spec on this is like 17 foot-pounds, but it's going to be very difficult to get a torque wrench back here. We'll just get them snugged up first. Yeah, I'm going to need an extension. Just go one more pass, torque them down to 17. Click. Be smart, this is aluminum. You do not want to strip out aluminum threads. If you watched the removal of this head, you saw what happens to stripped out aluminum threads, where somebody manhandled the valve cover bolts. Come on. There, that's it. Done. Oh, the setup I was using, just a 12mm standard socket. what is that, a 2-inch extension for the 2 outside bolts, and then just a longer 1/4-inch ratchet that flexes to allow me to get in there. Alright, we'll get the exhaust manifold on, which is part of the catalytic converter. I had to replace it on this one because the manifold was cracked. Unfortunately, you have to buy all one unit. But yeah, they recommend, as I mentioned before, new exhaust bolts or nuts, and comes in a pack of 10. You'll only need 9. Alright, using a brand new Honda exhaust manifold gasket, we'll go ahead and put it on. These little ridges right here should be to the outside. If you can read the letters EX, that means you got it on right. We'll just slip it on using some clean gloves. We don't want to get this mating surface messed up. Alright, we'll go ahead and put our new exhaust manifold slash catalytic converter back on. Now that we have the gasket in place. While I'm thinking of it, I'm pretty certain there should be a bracket down there that attaches this, and there should be one on the intake underneath. But this vehicle's been worked on before, and they were never put back on. So we'll just set this into place, being very careful. These 2 underneath helps to have a short extension to help you out. Alright, before I tighten this up, I'm going to go down below and bolt this up while I still have some play in it, make it a little bit easier. So here's a shot from below. So I'm just going to bolt that up to that. And then over here, there's a bracket on the other side of this that mounts to those 2 bolts right there, or studs. So I'm going to mount that back up. A little difficult to film underneath here, so I'll just show you after. There you go. That's a shot of that all done. And I should mention I did put a new gasket in there. And then over here, all back bolted up. I put some oil on those threads to make it a little easier. Alright, let's snug these down. Same thing from the inside to the out. Crisscross. 12 millimeters. Alright, they're 23 foot-pounds. I don't know how many of these I can reach with a torque wrench, but we'll find out. See if we can't slip this timing belt on where our marks are. And you can see the timing belt is back exactly where we have it marked on both sides, just like I marked it. And all I was doing, I just put a bar right there just to kind of hold the belt while I shimmied it on. I pressed against this engine mount. I didn't press against the plastic or anything else. Just slide it on. Takes a little practice. Obviously this is not the Honda recommended way, but it saves you a bunch of time. Alright, while we're right here, we'll put this power steering bracket back in. Just remember, there's 3 bolts. The longer one is going to be up at the top, because you see that fatter portion right there. Alright, we'll get it snugged up. These are 14mm bolts. Get them snugged up. You're going into aluminum, you don't want to tear it up. Alright, just moving around the horn. We'll go ahead and put our 2 new oxygen sensors in there as soon as we got a new catalytic converter. These are from NTK, same company that NGK that makes the spark plugs for these. They make a lot of original equipment O2 sensors, so we'll go ahead and put them in. One goes right here where this little cap bolt is, and then one goes on the bottom. They just thread in. Alright, as you can see, these NTKs, they come with the correct plug, and they come with anti-seize already on them. That's why they have this cap on there. I try not to get the wires all twisted. Alright, we'll get this O2 sensor snugged up. Just use a socket here. That's it. Just need to get it snug. I'm going to do the same thing to the one underneath. There you go. That's the bottom one installed. And we'll just get them plugged back in right now while we're thinking of it. Alright, as you can see, the O2 clips in right there, plugs into place just like the original. Same thing with this one, the bottom one plugs in right there and then slides over this clip just like the original one. Alright, before I forget and we have issues, I'm going to reattach this ground. Alright, even if I have to take it apart later, I'd rather have it on now so I don't forget. These things like this are easy to forget, and all of a sudden you have engine trouble and you don't know why. Alright, with a brand new hose from Honda with new clamps, go ahead and slide it on. Alright, just continue moving along. Go ahead and get this plugged in. Get that plugged in, and we'll get the heater hose on. Alright, this is a brand new heater hose because the distributor O-ring was leaking on this. And if that happens, it usually will make it swell and cause a leak. So once again, we don't want to do all this, and you can see that was new in here too. We don't want to do all this work only to have hoses break and leak on us. Come on. Alright, I need to get these reattached. So the top one, that's easy, that just goes right here. This bottom one snakes around, goes up under here, and if you can just see where the end of my finger is, there's a little nipple right in there. That's where it's going to attach. Kind of a pain. And the whole reason I had to disconnect it from in there is because it's in the way of this nut on the intake, the center one, the one that's hard to get to, the one you always drop. Tell you what, a set of something like this, these long handled pliers with different bends on the tips, awesome for doing stuff like this. And while I'm thinking of it, when you have everything apart, that's a good time to fix certain things. Like these battery cables were corroded really bad, so I went ahead and bought new cables and put them in because they route down under here, and it's a lot easier to get to them when everything's apart. Also, I put a new PCV valve in there with hose, and with the head off, it was easier to get to. Those things are still a pain to get to, but that's a good time to replace it. Sorry if you couldn't see with the light in there, but I could not see anything. Didn't realize it was glaring at the camera. Alright, we'll go ahead and install the distributor back in. Goes like that. We'll know if we're in the right place as long as our rotor's up at the number 1. And brand new O-ring and a light coat of oil on it. And I'll just line up the marks that I made earlier right there. If it doesn't slide in easy, I stop, pull back out, find out what's wrong. And I just made sure to line up the marks that I made earlier. That way our timing will be the same. Otherwise, you gotta get a timing light and adjust the timing. Alright, we'll go ahead and snug these up. snug. Alright, let's see if we can't put the screw back in this bracket without dropping it. Alright, put some oil everywhere. I'm going to turn the engine over by hand. Well, there you go. I barred it over around, I don't know, 7 or 8 times, I think. I think it was 8. You can see our timing mark right on. And up here, this is marked up. And then we got our 2 spots right here, even with the deck. So our timing is still dead on. Alright, let's get this power steering pump back in place. I did pull this ground off just to get it out of my way. Not a ton of room in there. Alright, making sure our belt is on properly. We'll go ahead and tension it. It's always a good idea. Look underneath, make sure that belt's on the pulley properly. We'll put the timing cover back on. I used this, by the way, this Craftsman little pass-through thing to get those timing bolts on, because they're not very or they're not much clearance. This was able to sneak in there. Alright, you want to make sure, or I always make sure, this mating surface is nice and clean. We don't want any oil on it. Alright, I'm going to put the valve cover on. I already got it cleaned up. I got new seals in there and a new valve cover gasket. All Honda, so they fit well. And then I'm just going to put some RTV, or Honda Bond, right in the four corners and then put it on. Alright, this is what I'm using. Honda Bond. Part number 08718-0004. Now put bolts in, brand new bolts with washers in it. Seeing as the other ones, if you watch the video, they're broke. Alright, these are only 7.2 foot-pounds. Not the time to go gorilla on them. And when you put this on, it's a good idea. Look at your spark plug wells. Make sure the seal pops through there nicely, or the tube pops through the seal nicely. Alright, this is as good a time as any. Let's put the dipstick back. While I'm thinking about it, this is what happens when you go gorilla. You end up breaking the bolts like that. See how that one's broken? And guess where it was broken off into? The valve train. And that sucks to fix. And you see, when you tighten it down, it only goes to the shoulder right here. You're not tightening it any further than this shoulder. After that, it's just putting pressure right there and on the threads. And this is what happens. They snap off. Don't over tighten those. Alright, let's put the spark plugs in before we drop something down in there. Alright, get the cap and wires back on here. And we'll put a new air filter in, seeing as we're here. We'll go ahead and set the air tube / box back in place. There you go. There's the final product. It's always a good idea. Take a second, look over your work, make sure you didn't miss anything. Make sure everything's put back in its proper place. Be amazed how much you'll find. You just take a second after you're done, especially on a major job like this. I'm going to change the oil, put brand new oil in there, and I'm going to put all new coolant in there. That way she'll be ready to go. So in any event, hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. No flashing check engine light.